Today's guest is Robert Salvador. He's the CEO of DigiBuild. So, Robert, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here and looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, so I got a chance to look through your background. You have quite a diverse background.
Yes, I've stayed busy. I guess I always like to call myself a little bit of a nerd. So yeah, that nerd has come out in multiple different ways. It seems.
So, I mean, what were your interests growing up when you said, were you into technology in the early days or other things?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been very into tech. When I was younger, I played a lot of sports. So obviously, growing up playing outside, all that standard kid stuff. But I guess what wasn't as standard, for me was a lot of my childhood was running around construction job sites and, working on job sites with my dad. So I've always been doing that. So it's always kind of been in my blood. And then, being a younger person in construction, from a young age, I guess I was always more tech forward. So in general, growing up, I enjoyed, video games and, the newest technology as it was coming out. I had the iPhone literally 3 days after the first iPhone came out. I think that was 2007 or something like that. So while I wouldn't call myself like full techie, I think there's people who are more techie than me compared to most, especially in the construction industry. I've definitely, had tech in my background and, that's how I came to be where I am today, I guess.
Yeah. And you spent some time. Your dad actually had a contractor firm, and then you started one. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I worked for my dad throughout the years. He had a drywall contracting firm and, he was as good as it gets in the field. When it comes to building something, managing a job, doing all the stuff that, the trades do, my dad was second to none. Unfortunately, as we all know, construction is a lot more than that. The construction management piece, the financials piece, everything else it takes besides just the physical building. And that's where my dad really struggled. He didn't really have education. He kind of came from a bad area. So throughout the years, I would watch him be successful for a couple months on a job, and then things would go wrong. Um, so throughout the years, obviously, I gained a lot of construction experience. Then I went to work for Procter and Gamble for a little while as a market leader, and really got a lot of like back end business experience.
Yeah.
So about a decade ago, I came back to my dad and I said, "Listen, I'm going to start a company. Come work for me. I'll hire you to run operations, and we'll do this together." So yeah, that was about 10 years ago, and it was a successful endeavor for us. And can't complain. It's worked out pretty well.
Yeah. So, what made you go into consumer products? Because that's completely different, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, so after the 2008 financial crisis, as construction was hit pretty hard. So the developer I was working for at the time, I think this was 2 years after the global financial crisis or something like that. The developer went out of business, and so I actually had kind of a time where I was jobless, looking for a new position. So I ended up seeing a role, a management role at Procter and Gamble that, even though it was a different market, kind of intersected with a lot of the estimating and project management I had done in construction. So that's when I went to work for P&G, and I met my current co-founder, April. So April was the executive I reported to at P&G. So she was actually an early mentor of mine. I learned a ton of her on the sales side. And then throughout the years, we stayed in touch. And when I started DigiBuild, she called me up and said, "What are you doing?" And now she's a co-founder and COO at DigiBuild.
sure, absolutely. So, before we go on to your, growing your own construction business, um, what was one or two really key things you learned at P&G?
So I just think just the way they have controls of their operations, so in construction we have project controls, in consumer goods and packaging and products they have inventory controls and different types of controls on their products. So I would just say the way that everything had a process and the way everything had a control was definitely something that I looked at construction and I said, okay, even though we're dealing with different products and different goods and services, at the end of the day, having that tight control and understanding all the different things that are happening, whether it's, with your labor costs, with your material costs, with your scheduling, all of that is so important. The more control you have, the less risk you have. And I think P&G does a good job of that, being such a big, sophisticated organization. And that's really, I took a lot of those lessons to construction. And
Yeah.
we manage certain things in a similar way.
Yeah. So when you had your own firm, it was the first time running your own firm. What were your learnings there?
Oh, where do I start? I learned that construction is very difficult. I already knew that, but being, I guess, the last line of defense, owning the firm, that was definitely a first for me. Obviously, I've always had the greatest respect, for people who are in construction, for whether the people in the actual trades or whether the construction managers or the owners running the project. So always had that respect. I think it just really solidified it a lot more and really made me realize just how many hats you have to wear in construction to be a good construction manager. Again, I already knew some of that, but before owning my own company, I was kind of in one position at a company. I'd be an estimator or a project manager or a business development manager. When I started owning and running my own operation, I wore every single different hat, right? I was the business development manager, I was the estimator, I was the project manager, I was the attorney, I was the, everything, all the above. So definitely have a ton of respect for people who operate in the construction industry. And honestly, as different as construction is from where I am now on the tech side, in my opinion, prepared me to be a tech founder and tech CEO because I don't think there are many things more difficult than managing a construction company. And many of those lessons translate very well to managing a tech company as well.
Sure. And what facilitated that change? Like you ran this company for a while, you stopped. I mean, what was the reason? And you're doing something else now. What was the thought there?
Sure. So again, being a younger person in the industry throughout the years, I always knew that technology was going to come along and change things a lot. If you look at, and I had looked at every other industry grow and evolve into technology, whether it's even old school things like banking, right? Or even going to Walmart, you have a self checkout. So I knew that eventually construction would make similar changes using technology. And obviously, again, I was, pretty comfortable using technology. So one was just recognize the pain point and the demand for it. I go, there's so many things that are going to be changed by tech in this industry. And the other was just, I think, the bandwidth and how much I was putting out versus how much you can get back in construction. We were successful, we were making money, but I look and I said to myself, in 25 years, what does this look like? I could make a bunch more money. I could continue to expand the construction company, but then I looked at tech and I just kind of said, there's something we can really do to improve the industry. You know, I wasn't really improving the industry as a construction person. I was building things and it was great, but I wasn't improving the broader industry. So I just had a vision and a hunger to do more. And there was just such an opportunity with tech in construction. And I had been on the forefront of construction and used so much tech that it was just a synergy that decided was worthwhile. So I'll always be a builder at heart, but the tech allows me to make a much bigger difference in the industry. And that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And it just like one day you decide to do? Was it something that was kind of eating away at you slowly and you're kind of working on it on the side? How did that look?
Yeah, so I mean, DigiBuild now has been around for 5 years, but what I always tell people is the first 2.5 years we were part time, just putting ideas together. For the first 2.5 years, I was still fully running construction, and DigiBuild was just my job from 11 o'clock at night till 1 in the morning, right? Putting together a business plan, brainstorming ideas, looking at some other things. So yeah, it's really the last 2.5 years that all the momentum, customers, investors has happened for DigiBuild. So those first 2.5 years, it was definitely, moonlighting and doing double duty. And, again, luckily what DigiBuild does is right in the construction where I, spent all my time. So it wasn't too much of a transition. It was just kind of, different parts of the market. But yeah, definitely was doing both for a while. Kept me
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you attracted the interest of why Combinator. What was their interest? What did they see in what you were doing?
Sure. So YC is great at, looking at technology, looking at markets and seeing where they'll be disrupted. YC has, I think it's 60 unicorns, companies that are worth at least $1 billion. And I think in total, I just read that their holdings are worth 500 billion right now. So YC are masters at looking at a market that can be disrupted and finding the companies that will disrupt the market. And what they saw was construction is a massive industry, one of the biggest, oldest industries in the world, that is still very much at the beginning of the transformation into technology and software. So they saw, that we had the experience in the industry. They saw that we were solving pain points that mattered, and they saw that we knew how to bring the technology to the industry. It's one thing to build technology. It's not easy, but many people can do that. It's another thing to get the market to take it and use that. And so I think what YC saw was our ability to not only build the product, but also we know the industry, we come from the industry, so our ability to bring that product to market. So yeah, Y Combinator is obviously incredible, and I would recommend them to any company, anyone trying to build a major company.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what's the main problem you're trying to solve with the technology you have?
Sure. So, in construction, whether you're a general contractor or an owner, real estate developer, we spend so much money, time, effort, and risk managing and procuring building material. So, as you know, construction is a $11 trillion industry globally. Around 30% of that spend is all on building materials, managing it, procuring them, tracking them to the job site, interacting with other stakeholders. And so, in an industry where we have small margins, where we're trying to improve in so many different ways, the most consistent reason that these projects finish late or over budget is supply chain issues. And so basically what DigiBuild does is helps to solve those supply chain issues for contractors and owners. High level will help them find material, will help them order it, will help them track and manage that material, and then we'll capture data around all that material for them to make better decisions for the next time. So supply chain is a very big part of what we do as construction managers and builders. And it's really one of those workflows that hasn't been solved yet. And so that's what DigiBuild does, helps them find, order, manage, track, and capture data around building material.
Yeah, and what type of individuals do you have to get buy in on? Like, where are the points that you really have to get adoption?
Sure. So it really depends on the company and the company size and type. As you know, construction is very siloed. There's so many different types of contractors, builders. So we normally sell to at least mid-size or above companies. So 50 million or above are typically our customers, but we have some smaller customers than that too. Really, if it's say a $200 million or $100 million company, there's usually a VP of operations or some sort of VP of construction who is the one who brings in the technology and we work with. Talking to much bigger companies, we work with some of the biggest general contractors in the country, like BCC Construction, Hensel Phelps. Normally with them, it's kind of a multi-pronged enterprise sales process. So you go in through the innovation leader, and then they'll take you to a project manager who will pilot you. Then the innovation leader takes you to the CFO or a VP of operations who gives the final blessing, to bring the software or the technology in at a bigger scale. So I think construction's still figuring out like the processes. Many of these companies are just bringing on their first innovation leader or technology leader. So we'll usually sell to an executive of some sort. But one of the things that makes us really unique is our software doesn't really care about what the material type or the size of the company is. We can order with a drywall subcontractor the same way a real estate developer can order, a Google Nest thermostat with us. Our software is agnostic to what is being ordered or managed. So it allows us to really manage workflows for many of the different stakeholders, whether you're a subcontractor, a general contractor, or a real estate developer. So we have customers who are each of those stakeholders, the biggest real estate developers, the biggest general contractors, and then we also work with, mid-sized subcontractors.
Yeah. And how's that, and I haven't dug into what your tool software, works exactly, but how's the interface with, different companies' technologies or, processes? How's the interface there? Is there any friction there?
No, so I mean, we provide integrations with some of the major, accounting softwares and other project management software. So things like maybe QuickBooks and then Procore, we integrate with, so that that's becoming a necessity right now in construction and construction technology. It's went from construction has no technology to a lot of people realize construction need technology, and now we have a ton of startups, a ton of companies in the industry. So you're getting kind of software that's starting to overlap, and the end users in construction, as you know, are very unsophisticated. So we can't expect them to learn 5 or 6 or 7 different interfaces. So with many of the software that are out there, so companies will use us for their supply chain. That data will flow into, Procore Financials or QuickBooks or some other integration, so that we're not asking them to use DigiBuild and 6 other different softwares. So I
Wow.
do think as a whole, you're going to really see a lot of consolidation with integrations in construction. But then we also have probably, 60% of our customers use us by itself, DigiBuild by itself, just to manage their supply chain and material. So we can do either one.
Yeah. So essentially, depending on who you deal with, you just try to take that workload off of them. So if you notice that they're doing things a certain way, what can you do to bring it in so that there's minimum sort of training and sort of disruption on their end, right? That's what you're doing.
Exactly. Like the UI UX is very simple. It's, very familiar to what they deal with today. And a lot of the actions that they take, because us at DigiBuild, we come from the construction industry, we know what these users are doing on a daily basis. So a lot of our workflows are made to not disturb them. So they can get an email, and they can via email without even opening up our platform. And that transaction will go through our platform, get where it needs to go. The reason for that is, you think about the project manager, the end user who's using us, they have 50 different things they're doing, right? They have to talk to the roofing contractor, then they have to talk to, their project engineer, then their architect. The last thing they want to have to do in order to, let's say place a material order is fire up DigiBuild, find the right quote, click all these different things. No, you'll get one notification. This is the quote you wanted. It's ready. Click this button. Don't even open our, just click it in your email and we'll do it. So yes, exactly. We try to make it as low friction as possible because we know just how burdened all of these builders are nowadays, and we're trying to take that burden off of them.
Yeah, yeah. And how are you trying to get? How do you get the word out there? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I mean, as many of you and your audience may see, we're really big on LinkedIn. We create a lot of content, try and add value to the industry. So between both LinkedIn and Twitter, we have a very big brand recognition there. We're becoming, DigiBuild's becoming known as the trusted supply chain solution for contractors and owners. For the customers who aren't digital, who aren't on LinkedIn or Twitter, we're very active on the conference circuit. So we go to conferences, we speak on many of the panels and, expert things on supply chain. And then obviously, as you know, in construction, it has a great network effect, right? When DigiBuild is used on a construction project, you're exposed to 50 other contractors or stakeholders who might be able to use DigiBuild. So, we get a general contractor like BCC Construction uses us on their project and then goes to all their subcontractors and says, hey, you guys need to use this too. This is going to save you money and manage risk and reduce risk for both of us. So, yeah, I think the big three are digital realms like LinkedIn, conferences, and then just word of mouth and relationships on other construction projects. As you know, even though we're moving forward, construction's still very relationship based.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you mentioned something really interesting. I never thought of Twitter as an avenue to grow in construction. Is that the case? I actually haven't noticed that.
So there's actually a growing part of Twitter called Retwit, which is
Okay.
known as real estate Twitter.
Okay.
And you're seeing, especially on like the real estate developer owner side,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of contractors there too, but it's becoming a hidden gem because obviously Twitter is much more short form. So you get like many more daily nugget or like hourly nuggets from big real estate developers, threads and things like that. But so for knowledge, it's great. I wouldn't say in my personal opinion, it's not as big as LinkedIn yet, right? Like LinkedIn's the main medium for like construction and real estate, but it's definitely a growing sector on Twitter, and it's much less, I guess, busy than LinkedIn is. As you know, LinkedIn has messages flying left and right. Like you log in one day, there's 100 different messages trying to sell you something. Twitter doesn't have that. So there's a lot more personal messaging and things happening in construction and real estate right now. So I hope I'm not giving up a secret, but to anyone watching, yes, real estate Twitter is a gold mine.
That's awesome for sure. Uh, I mean, I mean, any other tips? I mean, you started, construction company, you started a, technology company. I mean, you've seen both now. I mean, any tips for people that, have a vision that they want to start something? I know you were doing it part-time. Anything that you know now that you wish you knew before?
Sure. Oh man, where do I even start? I think first of all, just saying, if you want to build something, I always like, the side hustle route first, at least to start, so you have your day job, then you slowly build something up at night. The best way to do it, because you're not, you're taking risk, but you're not taking stupid risk, and you're preparing yourself to launch, when you're ready. Whereas if you quit your job and just start something new, then you're like, oh my God, I have to launch now or else I'm screwed. So I am a fan of kind of moonlighting, construction being an example, become a project manager at a nice firm and then build your software at night, start slower, start with your ideas. I would definitely say whether it's construction or anything else, it's so important to know your market. And construction is very unique in that, right? You mentioned Y Combinator earlier. Y Combinator has built this blueprint for creating successful startups, and there's no one better than them. But that blueprint doesn't necessarily work as well for an industry like construction, because construction is just very unique. Like I said earlier, relationships are still big. It's super siloed compared to most industries. So what we had to do at DigiBuild was take the messaging from Y Combinator, take the good stuff, take all the stuff that we need to learn, and then apply it to construction specifically. Because there's just things that didn't work for construction, right? Like, in some markets, cold calls are great. In construction, you cold call a project manager who's walking a job site, you'll get a lot of 4-letter words, right? They're too busy for that. So again, I guess the point I'm making there is understand your market, because if you truly understand your market, then you can take other pieces of knowledge and use that in the way that's the most efficient for you and the market you're coming from. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest things is our go-to-market strategy. The first 2.5 years, we didn't know what we were doing. And then, launching product sooner rather than later, the standard startup, you know, whether it's startup or whether it's a construction company, you always want to launch your product, earlier, as soon as you can, start getting feedback, start hearing, what are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? So yeah, learned a ton and, love the entrepreneur life and, happy that I get to do it in construction.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything that I didn't ask you but you wanted to share?
No, I mean, I think, I'm definitely excited about where construction and real estate technology is going, especially, for subcontractors, roofing contractors, as we know, are, a very big part of the industry, but haven't gotten all that tech yet. I think all I would just say is, for people not to be afraid of technology. There's always that worry about, switching costs and is this going to eliminate jobs? And at the end of the day, we've seen it for thousands of years. Technology empowers people to do things better. It empowers organizations to do things better, more efficiently. So bringing in a software like DigiBuild, it's not going to, change processes so much that it ruins a company or displace people who, work for you. It's going to help you make more money, reduce risk so less bad things happen, improve outcomes for clients. And so I think it's important that the construction industry realizes that we're building bigger, we're building more expensive, we're building more than ever, but we also have to start being more efficient, more successful than ever. And so I would just encourage, anyone in the industry to adopt technology, look at technology. It will improve both our builds and our lives as builders. So that's what I would say.